Hi guys, it's Luetin here, and I'm joined today by Mangaminx, and we're going to be having a series of discussions in which we bring up topics that we perhaps would not fully agree on and just see where this takes us. So, Manga, do you want to sort of introduce today's topic? What are we going to be talking about today?
Hi everyone, I'm Mangaminx for those who don't know, and today Luetin and I are going to be talking about EA, one of the biggest companies in the gaming industry today.
So EA is a slightly controversial topic because, you know, they're not in everybody's favourite book. You know, they keep winning these awards in the US for like worst company to be employed by or worst people to work for and all these kind of things. I just don't get it. I always think that, like, they're a company, but they're not the worst company in the world. And I really don't get where people are coming from on this. There are always these horror stories about, oh, they took this company and they sacked all these people and blah, blah, blah. But the trouble is, when you're a company that's as large as EA, these things are just going to happen. You know, when you get to that size, other companies that are smaller, producers, they're not going to be in the same position to do those kind of deals and so on and so on. So it maybe won't work out for them. Now, I'm not totally defending them, saying that they don't do some terrible decisions. I am sure that, like any company, they do some choices which are guaranteed to be bad. But overall, I just don't get. I feel like almost it's become like this thing into itself, where it's like, oh yeah, we hate EA, and it's kind of just sort of self-perpetuating now. But I mean, I'm sure you don't agree with it.
I don't agree. I feel that EA, in terms of the current problems within the industry today, or at least my perceived current problems within the industry today, are the pioneers of everything that is wrong within the gaming industry at the moment.
Elaborate on that.
Okay, whenever it comes to things that will screw over the consumer in terms of ridiculous downloadable content. I mean, I'm just to clarify, I'm not against DLC as a whole. I'm against stupid DLC.
You're talking like microtransaction or game add-ons?
I'm talking about both. I'm talking about poor game add-ons and microtransactions. They are the pioneers of bad content on both those fronts. They are a company that has a history. Now, just to go back on what you said, actually, they're a company that has a history of buying other companies, swallowing them up, destroying everything that they were known for, and then getting rid of them.
So it's EA monopoly, basically.
EA monopoly, and that's not necessarily. I believe if there were more companies out there like the size of EA, like you pointed out, that would probably happen with them as well.
Yeah.
So I do concede that that's to do with the size, but at the same time, as a business practice, I still don't agree with it.
Yeah.
And I don't see Activision doing it anywhere near on the same scale and with the degree of infamy that EA seem to produce, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, like, other companies are going to have sort of different viewpoints that they come from. But I think sometimes when companies swallow up other companies, I mean, are you... would you cite specific situations where they have taken on, I mean, do they, I mean, where I'm thinking about this, right, is do they take on board like a whole company and then just get rid of everyone? Like, okay, we you know, you're a little bit of a threat to us, so we've killed you off. Or is it more from a viewpoint of, hey, you know, this little company, they've really got something going on here. We're going to amalgamate them into us, and then sort of, you know, maybe that project isn't a priority for us, but we're very interested in what they're doing and we want them to be a sort of part of us. Where are you coming from there? You know?
I would feel what they have a track record of doing is buying companies that have successful franchises independently, and then pushing for those franchises to be worked on and continued, and they mainstream the franchises, basically. I would say and in the current state of the industry, that means dumbing them down. And I will give some examples of throughout history. It's not just recently. This is something that's been on for a long time. So let's think about. I apologize for the drilling sound in the background, by the way.
That's fine.
Origin Systems, for example, the people who did the Ultima games, they produced Ultima 1 to 7, were purchased by EA, and then Ultima 8 and Ultima 9, possibly two of the worst games in that franchise, and certainly two of the weakest RPGs ever made. And it's like EA's imprint, and perhaps rushing the games, as they were accused of doing at the time, that caused everything to go. The games didn't sell very well because they weren't good quality, and Origin eventually died.
This does seem to be like a thing more recently, where a lot of gamers have been coming out and saying, you know what, we really don't mind. We want to wait 6 months for you to finish a game. We want it to be produced. We don't just want to get a game thrown out there and pushed out there in an unfinished state and then patched up later on. We want you to take the time to finish it. Now, obviously, certain companies are going to have the ability to do that, others will not. And again, it comes from the point of view of where a developer is sort of, what their principles are with that kind of thing. I mean, when you look at stuff like Rockstar and producing GTA, well, they have obviously delayed GTA 5, they've pushed it back loads. But they're in a position to be able to do that. They have enough money that they can sort of sit there and take all the time they need to produce their game, and they don't need to sort of, thrash those things out there. Notably as well, smaller companies, like really smaller, when we're talking about sort of indie gaming and things like that, again, they're coming at it often from another point of view. A lot of people producing indie games, it's maybe not even their main job. Some it is, some it isn't. So for them, again, it's more a kind of a labour of love. They're producing the game because it's their game. They want it to be the best that it can be. When you get in dealing with a publisher, yeah, sure, they have a lot of resources in terms of marketing and all of these kind of things, but you're going to be constrained by them. You're going to be sort of deadlined by them, and they're going to have an influence on you. But isn't it kind of like a double-edged sword? I mean, if you have a game and you're a developer and you want it to do well, you want to expand your company, yeah, sure, they're going to be putting these limitations on you, and maybe they're going to sort of push some things that are quite negative, but it does have the benefit that perhaps that game will get released to a lot of other people that it maybe wouldn't. I mean, surely that's something to kind of play off against the deal there.
To a certain degree, but I feel that I guess I'm a viewer that quality is the most important thing. Let's take a much more recent example. Let's take BioWare. Okay, BioWare were my favorite video game company of all time. Through the late 90s, like the early 2000s, titles like Jade Empire, Knights of the Old Republic, things like that were, I just love them. They were some of my favorite games of all time, and I thought they were amazing. And the original Mass Effect, I love that as well. I love the original Dragon Age, but it was just at the time those games were being finished that EA purchased BioWare. And I feel that from the moment they have had their hand in BioWare, the quality of their titles has slumped significantly. And not necessarily, maybe not even the quality, maybe they have just turned away from what I felt made them magical. Like Mass Effect 2, I thought it wasn't a bad game, but it was a game that made me feel like I was being treated like a moron. And it put me off the franchise so much that I never even touched the third installment. I felt they decided to make it a Gears shooter with talky bits. And that really bothered me, and it turned me off them. But I still stuck by them, and I thought, it's BioWare, nothing can go wrong. Let's give Dragon Age 2 a try. And aside from the fact I enjoyed Dragon Age 2 as a dating sim, which it can basically be, the combat, story, and gameplay were absolutely shocking, and it was clearly pushed out in a really small amount of time. It had repeated looping areas, so you play the same area again and again. It was so badly made. And looking back at like the epics that were Jade Empire and Knights of the Old Republic, I felt there was a lot of time sunk into these. And
but you see, do you not think that there's perhaps a danger here? And this is not, again, this is not maybe specific to EA, but there's a danger when you have companies, developers that are producing these games, and like you say, their early on titles very different to the later ones. I mean, the thing is, when they're producing these early games, they want them to be really noticed. They want them to do as well as they can do, and perhaps there is a sort of, perhaps there's something to be said about developers not having these large publishers involved at all, because there's kind of much more on the line for them. It really matters that a game succeeds. Whereas if they're part of a major publisher, well, okay, nobody's going to enjoy it. In fact, it would be very bad if a game failed, but they're kind of under the umbrella of something else, so it's not the end of the world. I mean, when you look at companies, for example, like PlanetSide 2, that people will know as a company there, PlanetSide 2 as a game, again, they're not sort of under this umbrella like you would have with DICE and Battlefield working within EA. So with PlanetSide 2, it's very, very important for them that they push their game out and they talk to their community and they make it the best they can and they get feedback, and it's just a constantly ongoing process. Whereas when you have companies, developers that are part of a producer, a publisher like EA, then that kind of gets eliminated. They don't have that same kind of thing going on, because EA are kind of like, well, we want the game to be like this. We want, they talk together and they're like, well, we don't really need to listen to the community too much. Just look at other games and titles that have been coming out more recently. When we look at the shambles that's been SimCity, and again, this whole, constantly being online, blah, blah, blah. I mean, you often wonder that there's sort of like, they've created a game, And then EA have said, well, you know, that's really awesome. You've come up with a great game here, but we want you to include A, B, and C, and we want you to put those elements in. Now, those elements may not be very big, but you know, it kind of may undermine the entire concept of the game from the word go, just by putting these small things into place. Perhaps stuff like constantly being online, things like this, things that have really been breaking the game. Although I got to say, with SimCity, from what we can see there's a lot of other issues going on other than that, and I think that's purely going to be down to the developer there. But do you think that perhaps is the case, that a lot of the time just being part of this umbrella of a publisher actually kind of ends up degenerating the concept, like what you're talking about with things like Dragon Age and all of these sort of things?
I think it's not even necessarily 100% EA's fault. I think perhaps when developers find themselves under the folds of a publisher, they can slack off. And
exactly.
It does become more about a culture of money rather than a culture of engaging with the viewer, you know, the fans. And I guess what bothers me most about EA in all of this is a lot of larger publishers are starting to listen to the fans and not do ridiculous content. Like Bethesda, they had a big scandal way back when Xbox and PS3 first launched, and with Oblivion, when they had the horse armor DLC. Everyone remembers that. Everyone can pinpoint that as a stupid piece of downloadable content. And since then, they've been very good. Like Skyrim's DLC, Hearthfire, okay, maybe not a proper full-fledged thing, but it had worth. You know, all the DLC for it had worth. It had a point. It was delivering good content that was worthwhile. It wasn't on disc. You know, it was good. It was DLC the way it's meant to be done. And Bethesda get it, and Gearbox get it. And you know, it's really important to see DLC done like that. And companies that do make mistakes, like Capcom made some mistakes with the Street Fighter on disc DLC and things like that as well. They seem to be learning from their mistakes and not doing this again because they're listening to fan feedback. But at the same time, I see articles from EA going, well, actually, we're making loads of money anyway, so screw you guys. And that sense, I guess it's really like the attitude that bothers me more than anything, and the fact that they feel they can get away with this. And at the same time, I'm not sure they can, because at the moment we're seeing a lot of news of EA layoffs, games not performing as well, and I wonder if they're going to have to at some point take heed of what's going on. And
I think often it will get to that kind of point when they sort of start to realise, hey, you know, things have been going along, but actually there's a large rebellion happening here. And I think within gaming, it's perhaps a little bit more pronounced than in other areas of media. You know, gamers tend to be very, very passionate about the things that they play and the way they play, and they're actually very, very interested in the companies and so on behind that. It's not just about product, it is often about principle as well, because a lot of gamers, they're very involved in the online world, obviously, and they care a lot about the sort of principles, the way people are dealt with, etc., etc. So I think more so than perhaps other companies in the world, it becomes much more apparent. But I mean, there's other things that I do actually, now that I think about it, are actually more concerning. For example, Criterion, who obviously produce the Crisis series, they have said that from here on out, they said this year, from here on out, they only want to produce free-to-play games. Now, you can kind of look at that from 2 points of view. A, that free-to-play games are becoming more popular, and a lot of developers are sort of going down that route, mainly because, I guess, I've talked a lot about free-to-play games and the whole kind of reason why they're good and bad, but what it actually makes me think is, are EA sort of filtering down, going, hey, you know what, free-to-play games make us quite a lot more money than normal games, you know, the sort of standard model for producing games. We would like you guys as developers to aim towards producing those kind of games. You can imagine that sort of thing happening. Now, they may say, oh, no, you know, we sort of don't do that with our developers, we leave them to get on with it and make their own choices. But I can't help but feel like it seems like the kind of thing that could happen, where they sort of identify, hey, you know, this model is actually really good. Maybe, even if they don't sort of lay down the law and say, this is how it's going to be, I'm sure that doesn't happen, because that would be a stupid thing to do. But I can't help but feel they may sort of lean them towards it and sort of say, hey, you know, guys, this model works very, very well. Maybe you want to sort of aim towards producing your games like this. I think that kind of thing is a worry. And when you have a very large publisher and the kind of, as again, like we say, if they take on board smaller developers, they're obviously going to end up sort of leaning a lot more than perhaps bigger developers, stuff like DICE and Criterion, who have been around for a long time, and they've kind of got the weight to say, well, I hear what you're saying, EA, but we want to do it like this. Smaller developers, they're probably not going to be able to do that. They're probably going to go, oh, yeah, okay, well, you know, you gave us this big opportunity, so we're kind of indebted to you. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, I guess I don't have a very high opinion of Criterion. The statements I see from them recently make me think, well, at least their owners and stuff are fairly stupid. And I think that I guess that I get annoyed by like sweeping statements like this is like they were saying Crisis 3 is our finest product ever, and I'm like, well, it really isn't, really, is it? Like, because Crisis is like a million times better than Crisis 3. But you know what I mean. On the subject of free-to-play games, I do agree with you. I feel that it's a major concern for me within the industry. I'm not saying all free-to-play games are bad because they can be done correctly.
Yeah.
I'm playing Neverwinter at the moment as an MMO, and while I feel the cash shop prices on it are really unreasonable and ridiculous, you don't really need to use the cash shop at all to have a good time. And, you know, I feel that there are some flaws in terms of the cost of the cash shop, but in general, it's a free game, and I've got a lot of hours out of it for free, and that's incredible. And there is a place for free-to-play games, in my opinion, but only if they're done right. And I feel that the more they are done wrong, the more that people are going to harm the industry.
Yeah,
you know?
and I mean, it's pretty well known that free-to-play games long-term can end up making a lot more money just because of the way they play on and on. And as I say, that would be a concern for me, that publishers could end up... I mean, as I say, I've just so you know, guys, I have no evidence of this, okay? I have not sort of seen any statements or whatever, so I'm just literally thinking out loud. But for me, I can imagine it would be a concern that publishers could say to developers, you know, guys, this is a good thing to do. And I just don't like that idea. And in a way, you see, that's what it really comes back to, this idea of a publisher pushing things on other people. But I would like to sort of, you know, this sounds like I'm coming around and I'm going, oh, you know, actually EA, they're not so good. But I would like to kind of bring this back and say, I don't think that's really the case. Like EA, yeah, for sure, I'm sure they make bad choices. I'm sure that they do some things that we as gamers would disagree with, like pushing ideas towards developers. But at the end of the day, I am sure that all publishers do that, even if it's more apparent in some than others. It's just going to be the way, because at the end of the day, that is what a publisher is, okay? They have developers under their umbrella, and they are going to try and influence them, because otherwise, they're not doing anything. That is the whole purpose of them.
That's true.
And, you know, all developers are going to do that. And I think it just happens that EA happens to be very big, and therefore the choices that they make are perhaps more apparent. And let's not forget, they are working on multiple kind of AAA titles. So the games that come out are going to be bigger, therefore they're going to be talked about more. They're going to be a bigger deal for gamers, because obviously everybody's so excited about SimCity. Everybody's so excited about Battlefield. Everybody's so excited about all these large titles. I mean, they have a huge list of really massive titles that we know about. Command & Conquer, Dragon Age, Harry Potter. But then let's not forget as well, their massive sports arm. I mean, this is something that never gets mentioned on. I mean, they got FIFA, Madden NFL, NBA, NHL. They got the golf games, Tiger Woods, and all these sort of things. These sport franchises have been around forever. I mean, I remember playing these on the Mega Drive, okay? So their sports arm as well is massive. And that is a massive, you know, it's quite a punching arm for EA compared to a lot of developers.
It's a huge chunk of their business, and it's probably the most profitable chunk of their business as well.
And I think, you know, that kind of thing to sort of take on board, it's something that's obviously very important to them. And the way you have to view it as well, try to view it from EA's perspective, okay? They obviously want to keep everything profitable. They want to keep everything working. They want it to be profitable. And this is, again, something that, it's something that far too often, people online or gamers in general don't really like to think of. People, they hate thinking about money, and it's like, no, everything just must be produced out of love. It must be about just the quality of the game and nothing else. And it's kind of like, it doesn't really work in the real world. In the real world, people have money and they want to do well, and investors want money, and, you know, everybody wants to earn a living. A lot of people at the top want to earn quite a better living, but at the end of the day, cash, it comes back to that, and people hate that because cold hard cash, it's not very warm and fuzzy. It doesn't go towards, you know, having nice things. It's something people don't like to think about. But at the end of the day, EA, they're there to make cash. They're a big business, and they are going to do what's necessary to ensure that happens. If that means cutting people out, if that means dropping games, if that means sort of pushing titles, and, you know, for example, the sports one is one I would go with. You know, they have known that series, they have known that entire production for such a long time. They know what works, they know how it's going to work, and they are going to sort of be involved in making sure that those things are profitable, because it's something that they can't afford to lose as a company. And I think when you start looking at other developers, those kind of things are going to happen. You know, they're going to say, well, you've done very well with these games, but we want you to sort of maybe look at this, look at this, look at this. That is just the pitfalls of having a large company. Developers don't have to necessarily go with them as a you know, a publisher. There's other developers around, etc., etc. I mean, this is another thing when people sort of go, oh yeah, you've screwed up this game, you screwed up this. The developer does, you know, often, you know, they're going to have a choice. They chose to go with EA, etc., etc. They only put a gun to their head and say, you must be with our publisher. So I think sometimes people can go a little too easy on developers as well. If you've got a lot of criticism, it's not just EA's fault. And I don't know, that's where I would come from as well.
It's not just EA's fault, but I feel, I know you say like we don't notice the other publishers doing it, but say for example, there's things that are like extremely noticeable that you don't find elsewhere. Let's look at Dead Space 3,
sure,
for example. Okay.
I don't like that game.
Well, we agree on. Actually, to be fair, I have never played Dead Space 3. I boycotted it.
Yeah, me too. So there we go.
Well, that's the end of it. But anyway,
yeah, go on.
I was very annoyed to hear about the microtransactions which are used to make certain aspects of the game easier. Now, that annoys me a lot.
It does with a single player game for sure, you know.
Yeah, for a single player game for sure. If the game was free and it was multiplayer, then maybe I could let them off. Like if Dead Space was an MMO and you were paying money to reduce the grind or something, in
awesome
a free-to-play
concept.
MMO,
I want Dead Space to be an MMO. That's a great idea.
then maybe I could let them off just about. But still, this is a single-player game, and you are getting a bonus for real money to make the game easier. Now, obviously, it's not competing and stuff like that, and I can understand why they've done it, because people are stupid and like to do that sort of thing. But the very presence of it bugged me to the point that I didn't want to, you know, put my money into it, and I didn't want to play it. I played the first two. They were okay. They weren't super scary, but they were acceptable survival horror, third-person shooter type action games. And I couldn't play it because I was so annoyed by the DLC stuff. And moving on to Dragon Age as well. In Dragon Age, there are NPCs that try and sell you DLC. They're like, oh, you can't go down this path. Have you considered putting 600 Microsoft points into this DLC?
That's awful.
And it's like the ultimate immersion breaker, you know?
Yeah, it's terrible. I mean, with the DLC stuff for Dead Space, what would be acceptable for me would be you have to complete the game first. So you complete the game and then it unlocks an option for you to purchase extra stuff. So it kind of makes the game more enjoyable for yourself. You know, it's kind of like, oh, you've completed the game. Now try doing it with these things, or etc., etc. But from the word go, to be able to sort of buy stuff to improve yourself better for a single player game, no, I'm just not on board with that.
And I mean, it isn't just EA that are guilty of it. Like, pre-order bonuses are often... Sorry about this. This is really loud now. Pre-order bonuses are often very much full of that kind of stuff. So, for example, I don't know, like, Metro, for example, the new one, I think you pre-order it, you get an extra gun or something and some more money to spend in game. That does give you an extra bit, you know. And BioShock Infinite, for all its greatness, was guilty of that as well with its pre-order. Like, you got extra money and things like that, and extra. And it's only small things, and it's not the same as in Dead Space, but it is a creeping thing throughout the industry. And I feel that it is EA's pioneering of this that is something that causes it to be slightly more widespread. I'm not sure many people will copy EA exactly and have these microtransactions in full price games, because I feel that most publishers aren't as stupid as that and don't want to upset people. But,
I mean, I feel like the pre-order thing is something I can definitely agree with, because that for sure is a publisher choice. Okay, it's gonna be, you know, they are in charge of putting the game out there, marketing it, etc., etc. So it is definitely going to be in their realm when they say, hey, you know, with this game we're going to give you ABC. And I don't really like it. It annoys me. By pre-ordering the game, you're kind of adding security to the title, and you're sort of, it gives feedback to them saying, hey, you know, this many people pre-ordered, gives them a sense of, it gives them a kind of benchmark of like, yeah, this many people are liking the game already, so they kind of know. I have to say though, just from myself, point blank, I always have not really enjoyed the whole process of pre-ordering, mainly because a lot of games can be marketed so hard that, and even they look very good. I mean, often a lot of large editorials end up being conned as well. Let's not forget a game that came out quite a long time ago. Anybody remember Haze? Do you remember Haze?
I do remember Haze, yeah.
Okay,
Free
Haze.
Radical, yeah?
Yeah. Haze marketed so hard, and I remember reading the articles in all different publications, online and in print, people going, oh yeah, Haze, it's going to be so good, look at these graphics, blah blah blah. You know, when the game actually came out, sucked. It was awful. It was just just literally from day one, people were binning it, going, this game is crap, the AI is awful, they just binned it from,
and then Free
day
Radical
one.
bankrupt, didn't they?
Yes,
shortly afterwards. Yeah,
exactly. It killed them. And this is the point, is that I never really get on board with this pre-ordering thing. Even with titles that have been well established, like Battlefield and Call of Duty and the sports series and things as well, anything that kind of has a very ongoing franchise, you know, and that tends to be sort of multiplayer games, or let's say sports sims more so than perhaps single player. Single player games often run out a couple of, you know, maybe a couple of sequels, but they don't tend to go in the same kind of ongoing franchise. So, but the pre-ordering of those kind of things, I mean, I would say as well, single player pre-ordering is even worse because you just don't know. I mean, Metro Last Light looks amazing. I think it's going to be a good game, etc., etc. I mean, I know it's out already for some people, not over here yet.
Yeah, it's not over here yet.
Not over here yet. But I think, you know, it's done very well. It's had a lot of praise, etc., etc., etc. So you would probably look at that and go, yeah, you know, this is probably quite a safe bet. But on the other hand, do you really need to pre-order it? Do you really need to pre-order it? Often when people are, I mean, for example as well, they're taking pre-orders of Battlefield now. It's not going to be out for like 5 months or something. It's insane. Like, why would you pre-order it now? I mean, they are, this is another thing as well. They're offering, now it's beta access for Battlefield 4 with a pre-order. You pre-order now, you get access to the beta. And
that's ridiculous.
It is.
That annoys me.
It is
so
kind
much.
of like emotional blackmail. You're kind of like, hey, you want this? You want this? It's like they're holding like a little carrot and a stick, going, ah.
Exactly.
And you know, this is this is a good example. This makes me laugh a lot. Medal of Honor. They said, okay, buy Medal of Honor, you will get Battlefield 4 beta access. So there was like literally you have to buy this game. And at the time, everybody was going, oh yeah, I'm going to buy this game just for Battlefield 4. And I was like, what? You're going to buy a game just so you can get beta access to Battlefield 4? Are you crazy? And then everybody was going, yeah, but you know, Medal of Honor is going to be a great game, and plus we get Battlefield 4. And I was kind of like, screw this, I'm not getting Medal of Honor because I think it'll be a crap game. Yeah, funny about that. But yeah, Medal of Honor bombed. It sucked. But they had already got so many people buying the game just off of the back of these little, you know, tempting treats of like, yeah, give it, you know, we're going to give you this if you do this. And I think that's really what I hate with the pre-ordering thing. The little bits of like, you get an extra gun, you get a few extra credits. I actually think that's okay. I don't hate it. I mean, it's not like best, but it's not the worst. Like it's like, yeah, personally I would prefer just to not have pre-orders at all. I think when a game comes out, you should just go and get it. But maybe I'm being a little bit old-fashioned, having grown up in a world where when I went to buy games as a kid, I didn't even have, you know, I had no way of reviewing them. There were magazines out, but again, you didn't often buy those because, you know, when I was little I only had pocket money, so you know, you had to just go to the store, you had to look at the box and go, do you think this game's any good? I don't know. So it's a different world.
I bought a lot of crap as a result of that, to be fair.
Yes,
but,
definitely.
So, I agree with you. I think if pre-orders are to exist, I feel they shouldn't have any bonuses with them, because the bonuses exist purely to screw over those who don't have the money or aren't going to commit themselves early on. And that's the only reason pre-orders exist, is literally to blackmail people into buying a product early. And okay, so sometimes I get pre-order bonuses. Sometimes I'm given like a copy of a game in advance by the publisher, and it comes with the pre-order. You know, sometimes I just have them, you know, and stuff like that. And it's not. I myself would never willingly, you know, pre-order something because of like the blackmail behind it, as it were. And beta access is one of the worst blackmails. You're getting me to pay you to play your beta.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it?
It's like they're getting you to pay them to beta test the game. They should be paying you to beta test the game, or at least just giving it for free. It's ridiculous. So here's a half-finished game. Give us 50 quid in advance, and you can play it. Fantastic. Well, brilliant.
It is. It should just be something that gives. I mean, I remember with Killzone 3. it was just, you know, they just whacked a beta there on PSN. Anybody could play it. It was just free. Like, it was like, come and play our game. We want you to be interested in it. Guys, they want you to, you know, a beta is about giving feedback and getting people interested in the game. It is not something that you should have to, like, you know, it should not be some secret club where people are like, oh, you know, bad luck, I didn't get in it this year. That's an alpha, guys, all right? An alpha is where it's like a small amount of people they get to test the game because it's very early on in testing, and an alpha is about the really sort of critical feedback early on in the game. You will not have a massive public thing for that. But a beta comes very, very close to release. It's about fine-tuning. They want people to get interested. The more people that play the beta, the more people they can get interested in it. So it shouldn't be this thing that you have.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, you know, it shouldn't be this thing that you have to subscribe to. They should be just putting it there for any game. You know, it's not specific to Battlefield. It should just be for everyone. That's what it's about, to generate interest. Oh, I'm getting annoyed now.
It should be. Alphas should be closed. I mean, I play alpha sometimes. I get into them. Yeah. Betas, there should be a closed beta period as well.
Yes.
And if you want to open an open beta, it should be free and accessible for everyone. The end. That's why it's called an open beta.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? It's ridiculous to charge for it, and that really bugs me. We're agreeing more about this, you see.
Yeah, you've dragged me down to your
to my level, level of anger.
But I think this is maybe a good point to round off here now, guys.
Yes.
I think it is, because we kind of covered quite a few points here. The idea of you know, publishers being this umbrella covering companies. Do they benefit them in some ways? Do they affect them negatively? And I think at the end of the day, these large companies, I still maintain these large companies, they make some things that are bad choices. I don't agree with them, like, for example, the pre-order aspect, like the fact that I am sure they push certain ideas towards developers. But at the end of the day, EA has been around a long time. And if they really, you know, I just feel like in the 20 years I've been playing games, I don't feel at any point they have, like, you know, destroyed gaming. I mean, they've been there for a long time and they're well established. They have an umbrella under them of a large sort of haul, a massive nest of games they produced, all of which really amazing games. I mean, I don't know. I feel like any large company is going to be bad, whether it be in, you know, sort of resource management, like sort of BP and things like this. All of these companies really awful. They make terrible choices. I think that would be my last point as well. In the scale of things, are they really a bad company in the scale of things? You know, within gaming, perhaps. In the scale of things, wider than that, probably not.
No BP.
No, exactly. But I mean, there's a lot of other things going on in the world, which obviously, and you can't always think of it like that. You have to think within context. But within gaming, I feel like for sure they make bad choices, but not perhaps the worst choices that they could make. I think that developers have a hand to play in it, and I think sort of going on into the future, I think they will start to listen. I think they will come around, mainly because of the amount of negativity that's been thrown towards them. Now, I have to say though, it does depend. It depends on whether they sort of take it on the chin and go, we don't care, we're EA, you know, or whether they go, this kind of negative thing's been going on for quite a while, guys. Maybe we should actually start to listen. I have no idea. Could go either way. But for me, I'm kind of in the middle. I don't hate them, but I don't sort of, you know, I still enjoy them as a publisher. I think they put out good titles, and I think that often they get a bit of a raw deal from people. I think that, you know, what would you say, Manga? What's your last thoughts?
My last thoughts are, I feel that the raw deal they get is fairly deserved.
Have I managed to balance you out at all here, or are you still
maybe a little bit? I feel that sometimes the developers are to blame in certain aspects of bad game design, and it isn't rest squarely on EA's shoulders.
Yeah.
But I feel in terms of like the decisions made regarding marketing and promotion and pre-ordering and things, they are still extremely guilty. Yeah. Okay. Well, it's a good thought. We want to hear what you guys think, guys. So please drop it down in the comments below. We want to read, we want to comment, we want to react. We'll get back to you on your thoughts. And this may be a series to bring back up later, talking about EA, because I think going through the year, there's going to be quite a few titles coming out this year, 2013. This may be a good one to bring back later in the year and sort of look
look at a few choices, maybe sort of analyse the things that we've thought about today and then see whether they pan out this year. But I want to thank Manga for joining me today. It's been really good discussion, and this will hopefully be a series, guys, that we're going to run on into the future. If you have any ideas for future topics, things that you think might be a good controversial viewpoint, and the idea of this series is to kind of have polar opinions, Manga and myself, sort of discussing from opposite ends of the table. It may be, I say, if we end up with a topic that we agree on, I think we could maybe sort of try and take sides, say, okay, well, I'll try and argue it from this point of view. I think that could be a fun one as well.
Like a court case.
Yeah, it would be an interesting one, wouldn't it? It's like, all right. Thanks for watching today, guys. Hope you've enjoyed, and see you next time.
See you later, guys.